So now the next step is very simply to get, and you can use this, I haven't actually managed to find the right stuff anywhere, but this works just as well. I'm just cutting some off for you. It's basically Vilene or Bondaweb or iron-on kind of like, just iron-on fusing or interfacing, if that makes any sense to you. And basically the great thing about this is that it's transparent. So if I put it over it, you might be able to see particularly well, but you can actually see faintly the ticker tape underneath. And so this will allow me to trace out that pattern very easily. If I use something like calico or any other material, I wouldn't be able to see through it very clearly, and I might get the lines slightly out, which obviously means my pattern won't be correct, etc. And obviously I'm going to draw on here little notch marks just to make sure the pieces all this corset, so it helps me when it comes to finding a model that'll fit it. Okay, so what I'm also going to, I'm not going to talk very much because I have the pins in my mouth, but from this side, I'm just going to start at the top. In fact, I'm going to put my pins in here. I can start at the top and just pin outside my pattern piece, very, very simply. Okay, and the whole point is you want to get this very, very smooth to the form. Okay, you might have to alter the lines, the ticker tape lines, based on the fact that the material just won't mould around that pattern piece. You might have to divide it up maybe into another section, and that's very much all about the design of the corset. So I'm just going to go in. I'm going to be very rough kind of pinning at the moment just to get it on there. Okay, so I'm just going to pin that on there very, very quickly. And you can see there's loads of like, you know, it's not quite right, it's all kind of messed up. And so the whole point is to get a pair of scissors and to just cut very, very close to your ticker tape line, just in like little bits. This will allow it to bend or to move around this pattern piece in a more accurate, well, it just eases it. It's the same with putting notches in a sort of like, let's say, a round seam. You know, you put notches in it so that it splays open and happily wraps around. So now I've kind of cut where this area is. You see now it's easier to smooth this out, and I'll give you a close-up of this in a minute. Okay, so I'm just smoothing this all around and putting the pins in where it needs to go. And same down here. I'm just going to take that pin out. I'm going to pin another one just there. And I'm running out of pins as we speak. Sorry, this thing's covered in them. Okay, I'm just going to move down to this area here and pin in that bit there. I'm going to keep cutting as I go down, just to make this a bit easier. There we go. And luckily this pattern piece, it's not too curved, so it means I can do it all in one piece, which is great. That's what I'm looking for. Because if it was a really weird shape, it might not fit around the body and I'll have to dissect it even more. I hope that makes sense. I guess I could show you that, but it would take a bit of time. Okay, so there, as you can see, we've got our piece pinned out. I'm going to give you a close-up on that in a minute. Okay, so here you go, camera in hand now, might be a bit shaky. You can see with this material, you can see through. And I've just pinned, and I've cut into it, so it will mould the shape of the pattern piece. And I just pinned on the outside, because obviously I'm going to mark a line on this, all the way down for that one pattern piece, all the way to the bottom, and up the other side, and it should be quite smooth. You can see the whole area is quite smooth, which is exactly what I'm looking for. If there were ripples or darts or something going on here, then this would be wrong and it wouldn't work out. I'd have to put in another section. Okay, now, this side. Now I'm just going to get a pen, very, very simple, and I'm going to start marking out this pattern piece. You want to do them one at a time so that you can actually see, because when you start putting more on, obviously you're not going to be able to access this underneath piece because you've got these overlapping bits. So once you've done one, mark it out with a pen, very, very simply. And you have to be very, very careful to make sure it's right in the middle of this ticker tape. The ticker tape's about, what, 0.2 mil thick, so it's not very accurate, so you want to try and get it right dead centre in the middle. I'm just going to mark all the way around this pattern, very, very simply, and just space them like 2 centimetres apart. It's just a rough guide, because I'm going to take this pattern piece, iron it, and this is the great thing, the fact that it's fusing, that you can iron it to paper, and then A4 paper or A3, and then you can scan it in to Illustrator or Photoshop, and trace this with the Illustrator tools. And if you're wondering what the fuck I'm talking about, you should visit the tutorial on pattern cutting in Illustrator, and you'll understand why I'm going to put this into Illustrator. Okay? I really recommend you see that tutorial because it's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to call this front main. I don't know, I'm just going to make it up, main. It's just so I know where it is. I've already marked on the ticker tape a little kind of slash line, okay? And you can't see it, but it's just here, and I've marked them on already, so I know exactly where I'm putting this notch on here, so I know that this next pattern piece that's going to go on here is going to meet up at this point, so I'm going to mark it on the other pattern piece as well. Okay, so same with all of this. I'm just going to put on these areas where I've already marked. Okay, and that just helps when I start to put it together in Illustrator. I know exactly that those are the points that meet up, so if there's anything overlapping at the top or not quite meeting up, I know to shave it off that or to average the two out. It's very important that you have notch marks. I once did the corset without notch marks, and it didn't really work out particularly well because it's such a close-fitting garment. It has to be really, really spot on with your markings and things like that. Okay, I'm just going to call this 1 as well. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this side. There's no point doing both sides because I'm only going to use one pattern and use those. I'm only going to do one side of the mannequin. That's the only one I've mapped out. And then I'm basically just going to reflect the pattern and use the two together, and that will make it all very, very nice and clean. So if I did both sides, it would take longer, and obviously they wouldn't be exactly the same. Okay? Because obviously I couldn't mark these lines out in exactly the same position. So that's the whole point. Okay, so the next thing you're going to see is this whole mannequin is going to be covered in bits of this white violin. Okay? Okay, as you can see, I've completed the mapping of the corset. Yeah, I mean, I haven't basically done these two pieces here because I've got it from the existing pattern that I did, the corset I just showed you. I've actually already got those pieces anyway, and I can't bother to do it again, and they all match up, so it's fine. So yeah, I've basically mapped everything out now, okay, so everything's pretty much there. I've drawn on all the little dotted lines in the middle. I've managed to match them up. And as you can see, I haven't done one piece at a time. They've all been laid on now, the whole thing, all the way around, see? All the way down to the back. And, I've made the whole kind of like little, what do you call them? I've made the cuts to make sure that it moulds around the body. I've also noted on the waistline as well, okay? Not on the front piece, but just on the kind of like the back area here. Okay, so that's now ready. I can now start to take these pieces off and iron them to bits of paper and scan them into my computer. If I wasn't going to scan them and use Illustrator, what I would do is I'd take them off, I'd still iron them to maybe pattern cutting paper or something similar, and I would then start to use a pattern master, which is basically just a ruler but made for pattern cutters. It's got like a nice smooth edge and it's got 1 centimetre marking so you can do a seam allowance. I would then start to trace these lines and make them smoother and draw in all the notches and make a proper pattern out of it. But as I said, I'm going to scan them, put them in Illustrator, because then I have a pattern that will last pretty much forever. I can just print it off whenever I want to. I can also make more detailed amendments to it. So yeah, I'll show you that stage in a minute. This, oh actually bugger, I've forgotten 2 pieces. Okay, I need to do this section here and this section here. But I'll do that in the meantime. I'll show you the next stage in this kind of process. And so that you've got the notch marks, just make sure they're all on there and it all matches up. Okay? Okay, so as you can see, these are all my pattern pieces and they're a little bit crinkled and a little bit buggered up. So I'm now going to start ironing these onto paper. When I say ironing them onto paper, what I mean is because obviously they're violin, you see that surface, that coating, I can iron this to paper and it'll stick to it nicely. And that'll give me more of a solid base to work from. I don't know if you can see that in particular. Ah, I've got a zoom out function. Great, it's been zoomed in all this time. Yeah, so also what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all of this excess violin because I don't need it. All I'm looking for is this little dotted line pattern, so I'm going to cut all around these and start ironing to paper, okay? Okay, so these are my pattern pieces. I've just trimmed around the outsides, as you can see there. There's no seam allowance on it, obviously, because I just want the little bits in between. Now, if I'm just going to start sticking this lot to paper. So let's start doing that now. Just normal A4 paper, you know, from the printer, whatever. This also just kind of like flattens out the pattern piece as well, because obviously it's a bit wrinkly from the mannequin, so it just smooths it all out nicely and gives us something that we can scan in. Or if you're doing this by hand, you're pattern cutting by hand, then at least now you've got a bit more, you've got a bigger area for your seam allowance to kind of stick onto. Okay, and I'll show you that really quickly if you can do this by hand, just how you put a seam allowance on it. Although I don't actually have a pattern master, so it might be a bit difficult. Okay, there we have it. They're all basically put onto paper now, just ordinary A4 print paper. And as I said before, I'm now going to scan this in to my scanner. There is one thing though, obviously, this pattern piece here, for example, let's wait for it to focus. No, that's me, sorry. So, this pattern piece here is obviously longer than A4. Now, if you have an A3 scanner, no problem, you can scan the whole thing in one go. If not, it's very, very simple. Just scan in, put it on your scanner, and whatever A4 segment you get, simply, okay, so that's your A4 area just there, scan it in, and then basically move it along and scan in that area. And then in Photoshop, you can basically join the two together just by matching up all of the little dots and notches. Okay, very, very simple. I'll show you that in Photoshop as well. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, scan this in, and put it into Photoshop and Illustrator. Okay.